right, we're doing our immigration simulation this week. And so to kind of give us our background, and remember that when you drew your names yesterday, you noticed you were from very different places. So we're going to give you just some really quick background, and then we're going to get into you actually creating your passports and all that fun stuff. So let's begin. All right, first of all, there were three major waves of immigration in the United States. The first one was in the earlier 1800s, 1850 to 1860, 15 to 1860. So it's like up to the beginning of the Civil War. 5 million immigrants settle in the U.S. Most of them are English, Irish, German, or Scandinavian. You know, so they're going to be England and further north, typically, the northwestern side of Europe. So primarily, that's where those people come from. And one of the things you're going to be doing for Tuesday is you're going to find out your family ancestry and when you came over to the United States. And we're going to actually make a pattern on the wall to see when you came and what nationality you were.
Like our
and I think
actual cells are...
Your actual cells, yes. And you'll find that there are some really cool patterns because, well, for example, the Irish came around during the potato famine. So a lot of Irish tend to come during that era. So, yep. Okay, our next group was from 1865. Listen, 1865 to 1890. This is the after Civil War group. 10 million immigrants came, so we doubled in size. And again, they were from Northwestern Europe primarily. Now, the third group were 1890 to 1914. I refer to them as the turn of the century people, okay? We had about 15 million come, so notice we're going up by 5 million each time. They came from southeastern Europe, South and Eastern Europe. These people are primarily Austro-Hungarian, Greek, Italian, Russian, Lithuanian, and Jewish, and for a lot of different reasons. The Jews are being picked on. Not quite World War II yet, but they're being picked on, so they're coming. Russia is in a state of chaos, so they're coming around. And what's interesting is the first group, like Irish, Germans, they're picking on these people. They're picking on the Italians. Every group got picked on at some point in the United States. It's really sad. We always pick on the new guys. So, all right. So what are some of the reasons that they left? There are 4 major factors that provoked this movement of people after Europe's Industrial Revolution. Now, a reminder, the Industrial Revolution is the growth of cities and factories. Cities are booming and overpopulated in Europe, and they hit that before the United States did. So they're moving here because of the increase in population in the cities. It's too crowded. Commercial agriculture, growth of the factory system, a cheaper means of moving, like it was easier now to take a steamship from Europe to America. And the railroads are also cheaper because there's more of them, they're more available. Other factors include religious reasons, like the Jewish people we talked about, and even political persecution. They've got a leader that's killing off people. So those are some of the major reasons why they're leaving. But these are the 4 main factors. Okay. I love this. This is a poem that kind of addresses some of the feelings that they had coming here. You, whoever you are, all you continentals of Asia, Africa, Europe, Australia, indifferent of place, all you on the numberless islands of the archipelagos of the sea, all you of centuries hence when you listen to me, all you each and everywhere whom I specify not, but include just the same. Health to you, goodwill to you all, from me and America sent. Each of us is inevitable. Each of us is limitless. Each of us with his or her rights upon the earth. Each of us allowed the eternal purports of the earth. Each of us here as divinely as any is here. It was kind of a place of hope for a lot of those immigrants. They got a second chance, a new start at life. And you'll see that with a lot of our examples. So reasons why they came here. Why did they come to the U.S.? Free land. Rumors of free land. My goodness, we saw that in our movie clip that we showed. Freedom from political and religious persecution. They knew that here you had freedom to worship the way you wanted. You weren't going to get killed because you were a certain political party. The prospect of having a better life. You know, in Ireland, if you were third class, you were doomed to third class forever. I mean, there wasn't a chance for you to climb the ladder anywhere. But here, class doesn't matter. Doesn't matter whether you are a millionaire or you don't have a penny in your pocket. When you go rush for that land in Oklahoma, you're equal. And that means something to these people for sure. And it's hard for us to imagine that because we've had freedom our whole lives for the most part. That was a big deal. Typically, they were young men who have nothing keeping them grounded on their homeland. Why not, right? We want to go while we're young and explore the world, so we can do that. My great-grandfather, for example, came when he was 14 years old. He came all by himself. My great-grandmother came when she was 15 years old, and she came all by herself as well. Got a job on the railroad, and they met, and they got married here. They were being persecuted in Prussia area, so kind of scary to imagine them doing that. Now, one of the things that you're going to do, you're going to be experiencing each part of the immigration process. The first thing you're going to write about is the pre-voyage and getting ready to go. So before you're leaving the country, of course, you got to purchase a ticket. And you need enough money to purchase a ticket. So you will be given a list of things that you own, depending on your class, and you'll have to sell things in order to get your ticket. Some people sold everything they owned just to get that ticket across the sea. It's amazing to me. Then you're going to have to decide what to pack because you're only allowed one trunk for the family, and you got to put everything inside there. So if you were to pick the top 3 things that mean the most to you, what would they be?
My Xbox.
Well, there's no electricity back then. So let's talk about what things would be most important to you. Raise your hand. Tell me what you think.
Pictures.
Pictures. Good. What else? Money, if you have any. Family memorabilia. Good. Any other ideas? Possibly food? Good. Yeah. Okay. So you said Bible, what else? Firearms, maybe. Okay. Family valuables. Sometimes they brought things that they could sell, like silverware, for example. And then they would sell it for the silver and use that for money when they got here. Okay. Yeah, it's a tough decision, and you're going to have to make that decision as a team today. You also, of course, then have to go through quarantine and health inspections in order to even be allowed into the United States when you get here. And you had to do that to get on the ship, too. So you're going to go through an inspection, both physical and mental. On the voyage, this guy, I love this story because you can actually picture this. Luciano Crescenzo said, many immigrants had brought on board balls of yarn, leaving one end of the line with someone on land that they were leaving. As the ship slowly cleared the dock, the balls unwound amid the farewell shouts of women and the fluttering of the handkerchiefs, and the infants held high. After the yarn ran out, the long strips remained airborne, sustained by the wind, long after those on land and those at sea had lost sight. That last tide to say goodbye. Isn't that neat? I never heard that story until I read that. So your next area that you're going to experience is actually being on the ship and what it's like. Now, just like we talked about with Titanic, there was a great difference between steerage down in 3rd class and the upper deck, which was $80,000 a ticket, right? So their experiences were very different depending. The length of being on that ship was really tough for some, and some of them started to regret their decision to come. For example, this lovely lady here, what's her name here? Bertha Devlin. She was an Irish immigrant. She said, oh God, I was sick. Everybody was sick. I don't even want to remember anything about that old boat. One night I prayed to God that it would go down because the waves were washing over it. I was that sick. I didn't care if it went down or not. And everybody else was the same way. So all that great hope for the new nation kind of disappeared when they got sick on the ship. Then, of course, you arrived to either Ellis or Angel Island in the day. Ellis Island was on the eastern side of the coast. This was in New York Harbor. During operation, they had more than 12 million immigrants that passed through this site. And of course, then you go through interrogations and medical and mental inspections. And we will go through that. Some of you will get to pass through and go to the New World, and some of you will be sent back home. Some of you will be quarantined and locked up in a little area there until you get better. There were all kinds of different options for you. So this was a very frustrating thing. You notice all the lines, everything. You think Disneyland is bad. Standing in line for an hour for a ride, this was horrible. They stood in line forever. And sometimes the answers weren't what you wanted to hear. So here's Marta Foreman. She was a Czechoslovakian that went through Ellis. And she said, so when I came to Ellis Island, my gosh, there was something I'll never forget. The first impression, all kinds of nationalities. And the first meal we got, fish and milk. Big pictures of milk and white bread. The first time I ever saw white bread and butter. There was so much milk. And I drank it because we didn't have enough milk in my country. And I said, my God, we're going to have a good time here. We're going to have plenty to eat for the first time in her life. What a perspective, huh? Victoria Fernandez was a Macedonian immigrant. She said, my sister developed warts on the back of her hand, so they put a chalk X on the back of her coat. The X's were put aside to see whether they had to be re-examined or deported. If they deported my sister, we couldn't let her go. Where would she go if they deported her? So some families got split, and they would say, you can't go, but you can and you can. And what do you do then? What if it's your kid? You know, what do? You'd have to go back? If it was your kid that was allowed in and you weren't, would you send your kid without you? Those are some decisions they had to make. It was very difficult. This is a picture of Ellis Island around 1905, and you'll see the ferry boats shuffling in there. It is obviously no longer a site for immigrants. It's a great place to go as a tourist, though, and you could actually track your family's history there. The other place they arrived, if you were on the western coast, was Angel Island, and that was in San Francisco Bay in California. This was called the Ellis Island of the West, for obvious reasons. It was primarily a detention center, especially for the Chinese, because we passed some very racist, un-American acts in the United States. And one of those was the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. And we basically just wanted to make sure that the U.S. stayed white looking. I hate to say it, but that's what it was about. We were afraid that we might look too Asian if we let too many of them in. So we excluded them, and we put them in a detention center, and then we sent them back home quite often. Now, they were detained and interrogated while at Angel Island. So a lot of the people in this place typically were Chinese or Japanese for the most part. So here's what's going to happen to you. You obviously have your new identity. I gave that to you yesterday. You are first going to have to purchase a ticket and sell your property to get that ticket. Then you're going to create a passport. You also will create your paperwork that you'll carry with you as you go onto the ship. And you'll decide what you're going to pack. Passport. Then you're going to create a journal with 4 entries. 1 is pre-voyage, getting ready. 2 is the voyage itself on the ship. 3 is your experience at Ellis Island, because we will go through Ellis. And 4, your first 5 years in America or wherever you end up. No, you're not on the Titanic. Let me just shut this up first.